Hi, I'm Michael J. Rogers, the Forest Supervisor on the Angeles National Forest. That's Michael. J as in Joseph, Rogers, Rogers.
Okay. So historically, why were the national forests created in Southern California?
Well, the National Forest System really started here in Southern California. The early settlers realized very early in the mid-1800s that their dependency on water for their needs depended upon what happened in the San Gabriel Mountains, which led to the creation eventually of the first forest reserve in the state of California, and then the second or third nationally. And that later became, in 1905, the Angeles National Forest.
Okay, I think we need to talk specific about water. I mean, you did say there are concerns, but maybe we can make it more specific to water.
Okay.
Okay, so once again, historically, why are we here? Why were these created?
Well, the National Forest System started here in Southern California, and it was all water driven.
I have to start over again. I banged the tripod here.
That was a good start, then.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Inevitably, that happens. We get good ones.
Okay.
Okay. In reality, the national...
One more stop. One more stop here.
all the details.
Yeah. Okay, and tape is rolling.
Okay, so why historically were these forests created?
Well,
In Southern California.
yeah. The National Forest System actually had its founding here in Southern California. The early settlers came here, depended upon the water that came from the San Gabriel Mountains to maintain the ranchos and the farms that they carved out of this rich alluvial plain that is now Southern California. And they realized that with the repeated fires and the floods, and they were continually getting wiped out, that they needed to be managed, and they petitioned the federal government starting in the 1870s, which eventually led to the creation of the San Gabriel Timberland Reserve in 1892 and was later renamed the Angeles National Forest in 1907.
Good.
Okay.
I like that.
Tape is rolling.
Okay, so starting back in 1892, what exactly was the problem that created the national forest?
Well, the early settlers that came into Southern California were continually getting burned out and flooded out by fires that ravaged the coastal plains and the San Gabriel Mountains. And that led to the petitioning of the federal government to put the remaining federal lands, the steep San Gabriel Mountains, into protective management. And that led to the creation of the San Gabriel Timberland Reserve in 1892, which was the total source of all the water for Southern California. And today we're still supplying 35% of the LA Basin's water supply.
How was the wind?
That was fine.
The Forest Service all began back east and was all around timber. There's another story out here. Explain that to me.
Well, the national forests were created primarily because of their watershed value. The early settlers realized that all the water was coming from the local mountains here, which were essentially unprotected at that time. And because of the fires and repeated floods, and they're continually getting wiped out, they petitioned the federal government to take over these public lands and to start managing them for water supply, that's what led to the creation of the Angeles National Forest, the first one in the state and second or third nationally, was driven around water issues. And today we're still supplying 35% of the total water supply.
That was great.
That was good. Pick
I
it
like
up.
that.
Yeah. I thought the first part was excellent. There were a couple of little...
For someone that doesn't understand this, why were the Forest Service created here in Southern California?
Well, the Forest Service grew out of the need for watershed protection. The early settlers in Southern California relied on the water that was coming from the San Gabriel Mountains. That was the source of all the water for Southern California. And they're petitioning of the federal government to do something about the repeated fires and the flooding that continually wiped them out and destroyed their water supply, led to the creation of the San Gabriel Timberland Reserve in 1892 and eventually the Angeles National Forest in 1907. And today we're still supplying 35% of the total water supply to Southern California.
Nailed it.
That was excellent.
And what about that sound? Right now from these forests?
Yes.
What is the potential?
No, well, I don't think we want to get into that. Tape is rolling.
We're standing at the confluence of the East Fork and the North Fork of the San Gabriel River, which was the major supplier of water and still is today of water to the eastern half of the Los Angeles Basin. And not only was it a source of water, but it was also the avenue for the steelhead fishery that ran in peak flows from the ocean up into the San Gabriel Mountains to spawn and then returned back to the ocean. Today, with the number of structures we put on the San Gabriel River, we've lost that ability to have steelhead coming back into the mountains. The health of the state of a healthy water supply will be when we can have steelhead running back up into the San Gabriel Mountains.
Good. Okay, tape is rolling.
So can you set
Okay.
people straight?
Southern California or the Los Angeles Basin had a booming agricultural economy in the late 1800s, all furnished by local water. When the eastern seaboard started discovering Southern California and they started looking at it from a real estate perspective, the population quickly outstripped the total quantity of water we could produce, and the first outside water was brought in 1913. We today can utilize the water we have locally much more effectively and reduce our dependency on outside water. We're supplying 35% of our water locally. We could supply at least 50% if we were using the stormwater runoff more efficiently and recharging our groundwater aquifer instead of sending it to the ocean.
So the second
Good.
part was really good.
Yeah.
And how did that affect then our attitude toward the local water?
Southern California was we'll start over. Southern California was existing on local water up until 1913. They had boom and bust cycles where they had droughts, but we're gonna have to start over.
Yeah, no problem. Let's just start again.
Southern California up through the 1800s operated pretty much on the local water supply, given the fact that they did go through periods of droughts, but they were able to sustain the economy with local water until we started turning Southern California into a real estate mecca. When we started bringing in water from Owens Valley in 1913, the thought about conserving our local water supply kind of went out the window, and it was looked at to get our stormwater through the basin as quickly as we could to the ocean, because we had unlimited sources of outside water. And later we brought in Colorado River, Mono Basin water, and then the Feather River water from Northern California. Today, we're not using the water that's in our Southern California watershed effectively. We're sending much of it to the ocean. The exception is the San Gabriel River watershed that we're standing in, which uses about 90% of the water flow effectively. Still sending some to the ocean, which we need to do. The only limiting factor on the San Gabriel River system is the dams we've placed on the river with no thought of species like steelhead, and we essentially have disrupted a major ecosystem in doing that.
So then specifically, what is the Forest Service's role in this, in trying to collect some of this water? I mean, it seems like it's past, when you're talking about stuff when it's gone past the whole Forest Service area and it's out down below. Is there anything that we can do in the Forest Service?
The Forest Service needs to become a member of the larger community. We're living in one large ecosystem. The ecosystem doesn't stop in the green line that surrounds the National Forest. And we have to work collectively to use these resources we have. We need to bring the natural river systems back through these urban areas and bring wildlife corridors back into the urban areas. We're raising kids today on asphalt and concrete, and we wonder why we have all these large social problems. We need to have the ability to have kids learn about nature right in their own backyards, and we can do that here in Southern California.
That was good.
You okay?
Well, today,
Sorry. Okay, and tape is rolling.
So the question is, currently what percentage are we providing, and potentially what could that be expanded to?
well, today the watersheds of the Angeles National Forest supply 35% of the total water supply into Southern California. However, all the stormwater that falls in the Los Angeles basin is routed through the city as quickly as it can into the river systems and then out to the ocean. So if we captured and utilized the rainfall that's falling on the basin itself, not what we're capturing in the watersheds, we could increase our supply to 50%. There's visions that we could increase our supply to 50% and cut our reliance on imported water from outside the area.
I thought that was good. I think we can do a little bit better. So currently, the percentage?
Currently, we're supplying 35% of the water supply from the watersheds of the Angeles National Forest. However, we're not capturing any of the stormwater that falls on the Los Angeles basin. That water is routed through the city as quickly as we can get it into the river system and out to the ocean. And if we could capture and utilize that water, we could cut our dependency on outside water and supply somewhere between 50 and 55% of our total need.
Excellent.
That was good.
That was
Very
great.
good.
That was great.
Okay. Tape is rolling.
You ready?
Yeah.
Due to the fact that the mountains are here and the effect of orographic lifting, we get most of the rainfall on the watersheds of the Angeles National Forest. Now the rain and snow that falls in the San Gabriel River watershed is fully utilized. The water that falls into the Los Angeles River watershed is sent through the basin as rapidly as we can get it out to the ocean. So we're underutilizing trillions of gallons that are coming off the watershed. We're just passing it through.
That was good. I like that last bit. Okay, tape is rolling.
Okay, the Los Angeles River, which was really the life source for the development in Southern California today, is a concrete lined ditch which channels stormwater as rapidly as we can funnel it out to the ocean. The visions is to bring that river system back, to bring riparian species back, to widen the river, to move the walls of the river out wider so we have a natural floodplain and we have native species coming back, plants and birds and frogs and other amphibians, and that we bring back a river system, a real river system, instead of the concrete line channel that we have today.
Is this already beginning on its own? I mean, we saw all that growth coming up. Some of that already happening?
Well, there's some portions of the river that have a natural bottom just because of the nature of the water table, and we can see that the river will come back quickly if we'll let it. So what we need to do is, we thought we were doing the right thing when we developed the flood control system, was to protect property. We're realizing today that that was a single purpose system and that we need to have a multi-purpose system that takes into effect groundwater recharge, water capturing runoff, groundwater recharge, and flood control.
You know, something I think I'd like to get from you too is just how big of a problem was this flooding? I mean, I get a sense that it really was. It wasn't just a question of being oblivious to future needs. It really did wipe out a lot of homes, and I love the phrase you used, from alluvial plains to the fruit plains to the
Urbanized plains.
I don't know if you can incorporate that, but things have changed, and there was good reason for what we did. Can you address that?
Mm-hmm. Are we ready?
We are ready.
Okay, the Los Angeles, San Gabriel River, and Santa Ana River were dynamic river systems. When they left the forest, during the summertime, they went underground. They were recharging the groundwater aquifer. However, when we had heavy flows during the wintertime, they rambled over the coastal plain, which didn't have much definition to it. And as they filled up river channels with sediment, they would divert off, and these rivers had a 7 or 8 mile range of where they would go during heavy runoff periods, and this was devastating to the development. So the idea was to try to confine the rivers, and in our attempts to make these river systems more efficient, we straightened them out. We eliminated a lot of the nuances of these rivers that allowed steelhead and other species to thrive in these systems. And in making them more efficient, we turned them into very rigid waterways to get stormwaters through Southern California and do as minimal property damage as we could, or save as much property as we could.
That's good. I think that really needs to be said.
Okay.
That's good.
Click is rolling. Okay.
The three river systems, the Los Angeles, the San Gabriel, and the Santa Ana River systems, created this broad alluvial floodplain that we've built on today. And what we've seen is an ecological succession, if you need to start over.
Okay.
The Los Angeles River and the San Gabriel River and the Santa Ana River, over the millions of years, created this large alluvial plain that we're all living on today. And we've seen an ecological succession of sorts where the alluvial plains in the 1850s and 60s turned into the fruited plains. Today we have the urbanized plains. Now what we have to do today, we actually stamped out all signs of nature, concreting over, paving over, and roofing over most of the basin. And we need to bring nature back into this basin and make sustainable, or create a sustainable, livable community that has an ecological basis.
That was good. Okay, and tape is rolling.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, the Los Angeles basin today is probably the most sterile environment. It's probably the most built out, overbuilt environment you can find any place in the world today. And we've essentially eliminated nature out of it. Our challenge is to bring these systems back into some basis of viability. The Los Angeles basin was once rich from a biological diversity standpoint. All the rare and threatened and endangered species we're dealing with and trying to save today on the Angeles National Forest lived on this coastal plain. And we need to bring these habitats back to perpetuate these species. We're learning that the steelhead, remnant population of steelhead that we have here in Southern California was the basis for all the steelhead we have on the Pacific coast. And we're at a point in time where we're going to lose that stock, which would be a huge setback genetically.
And what about in terms of...
One of the opportunities we have when we restore the ecosystem in the Los Angeles basin is the creation of jobs. When we bring back medians, when we plant more trees, when we break up pavement and start mulching, start taking care of the trees, pruning them, cutting lawns, grass areas, we're creating jobs. We're creating a greening industry that doesn't exist today in Southern California. And in that same light, we're capturing our stormwater runoff and retaining it and recharging the groundwater supply. So the whole system connects to itself. We're creating more jobs, we're creating livable communities, and we're maintaining our water supply.
Good.
Quality goes down and the cost goes way up. So
Maybe that Dorothy Green can cover some of that.
Where's the energy saving
water we have.
Go ahead and say that again. Okay.
The local water we have here in Southern California from the watersheds is the purest and the lowest cost water we have in Southern California. The cost for water from outside the area jumps up double, triple.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Why-
Increases in double.
And you told me something interesting last time about the natural filtration and why that water is so clean and why it's so good. Maybe you could just
So,
mention something about
so
that.
the economics as well as the quality improved. Can you tell them when?
Tape is rolling.
The water supply from our local mountains is the highest quality water and the lowest cost water we have in Southern California. The farther out we go, the cost increases and the quality depreciates from the salts and the fertilizers and the other things that are getting into the water supply. So it makes more sense to utilize more of what we have here more efficiently.
Excellent.
Boom.
That's
Nice.
great.
Specifics that the Forest Service is involved with this LA River in the urban areas, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the Forest Service is involved off the National Forest and in the community of Los Angeles through state and private forestry, urban community forestry program grants. We're creating pocket parks, riparian corridors. We're funding grants for different community groups to do these plantings along the river. Northeast Trees, Tree People, the Los Angeles Conservation Corps are major players in bringing back this environment. And there's good redevelopment work already underway.
Good.
Okay.
Good. I got one more question.
It's why is this a passion for me? It all goes together. What we've done is we've fragmented our environment. We've looked at it in parts, and it doesn't all go together. And the only way systems are healthy is when we put them all together. People thrive and the systems thrive. So what we're about is trying to leave this world in a better place than we found it. And this is what we need to be doing in Southern California. And if we can do it here in Southern California, you can do it any place. This is probably the most compromised environment you'll find anywhere in the world, except maybe Tokyo or some of the one other major large city. But if we can recreate Los Angeles and bring nature back into the city and bring back a sense of sustainable communities and solve some of our social problems by putting kids to work in environmental issues, giving them a purpose for living, then we've really turned this whole thing around. That's what we're about. That's what we need to be about.
Good. That's great. Yeah.
Along those lines, you grew up in Southern California, correct? You grew up in Pasadena, Altadena area.
Mm-hmm.
Over that time frame, you know, how have you seen things change for the better and for the worse, but primarily related to how we treat our natural resources here in Southern California?
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I was born and raised in Altadena, California, born in 1938, and when I was born and growing up, we were in the process of trying to conquer the environment, not learning how to live with it. And in the years that I've worked, that's the paradigm that we've been. We were solving one problem at a time and not seeing how they all interrelated. Yes, we had a flooding problem, so we attacked the flooding problem. We realized the flooding problem was connected with the fire problem we had, so we put out all the fires. And what we've done, we've been postponing in creating calamities. The watersheds weren't burning as frequently, but when they did burn, they were burning with much more disastrous effects, and we were creating much worse flood scenarios than we had in the past. So in starting to work together with this system and turning it around, making it all work together, we're seeing that it's a win-win for everybody, that taking on individual problems one at a time doesn't tie everything together. It just creates additional problems, and that's what led to, here we are finally raising the walls of the LA River because we can't handle all the runoff, and that's the wrong solution. It's doing the same thing that we've done in the past. It isn't working, and it won't work in the future.
Good.
Great.
That's good.
That's the upper reaches of the San Gabriel River behind Morris, or behind San Diego Dam. It's essentially silted in. Now, if we got any of the burned hills around it, it's all going to contribute to more sediment. there's different oxygenators that they can use. You know, what the oil industry is saying, well, gas is going to cost more. But you know, the fact that oxygenating the gas worked